get a link, please? Can I get a link, please? Can I get a link?
Did we do this when we did the test?
No, I didn't capture the link. I sent you the link once it starts. I want a link before it starts.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to send the link to the.
I just want a link before it starts.
And as I predicted, there were people that called today and said, "When I haven't gotten the link, where's the link?"
Where's the fucking link?
And I said we were sending it at 5:30.
5:30, it's past that. Pressure!
But that's what you told me to say.
Oh.
You told me to say 5:30, that's what I did.
Okay, I found it.
Yay!
Now, but this is like streaming now, so.
Yeah, but you know what? It's okay because they're not going to turn it on, I don't think, until. But
Right.
If they turn it on now, though, what would they see? Like nude people or like people doing drugs and having orgies? Like, what would they see now?
Yeah, I have that all pre-built. It took a while, but I got it all edited and everything. So I'm gonna send me a link to myself here and make sure it works.
All right, and then tell me what you see if you like click on that link now. I'm setting up the email with all the emails in it. Oh, one of his customers. I bet I know who that was. Esther.
Esther.
My nemesis. Nemesis. Somebody bought a ticket to the wine event. Hooray. Okay, so this one. When did Tom say he would be here?
Hi.
Hi there.
Is that Dennis?
It is?
Hi, Dennis.
Hey Claire, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm just waiting for, I have to send this link out from Gary as soon as he sends it to me because people are waiting
Okay.
for this, but we can still talk. Okay, so, just tell me when you send it, Gary. And
Oh,
I'll
okay.
send
To Claireski email.
Send it to my Claireski
Okay.
email, and then I can send it out. We've never done this before, and we did a test and everything. But we're doing an event tonight, a talk about native plants and the importance of native plants and conserving water.
That's pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's like extraordinarily cool.
Cool.
And so also because we're in the process of doing this garden transformation that we're going to be trying to raise like $500,000 basically to just to redo the whole garden with native plants and get like a whole master landscape design plan and all this stuff.
Wow.
So it's a really big deal, and I wanted to do this talk. This guy is all trades and master of all trades, and the board president, who will be running the technical
Streaming for you.
streaming situation. We are so thrilled tonight to have Antonio Sanchez in our midst, who is going to be giving the talk on native plants. It's very timely for all of us because of the water shortage and the drought and all of these other things, but there are many, many, many other reasons why we all need to learn more about native plants and consider making some changes in our own gardens. And speaking to that, the Tarzana Community and Cultural Center is looking to make some major changes in our own garden. We're looking into getting some substantial grants so that we can take out our grass, which just uses much too much water, and our rose garden, which, look, everyone loves roses. I love roses, but it's just not the time for roses now. They take too much water, and what you will learn in this talk is that there are so many beautiful, wonderful native plants that you can use to populate your own gardens. I just want to mention a couple other quick things that we're doing here before they get started. This is part of our Tarzana Talk speaker series, and the next installment is going to be on September 23rd, and that's going to be a wine tasting. And it's going to be, exactly, it's going to be really great.
How come we couldn't have that right now?
And so I know, well, you have to come to that, okay? So Kevin Benning, who has a company where he educates people. It's similar to this. It's just like this, except
there's no wine.
Except well, it's wine instead of plants.
It's like a McDonald's at a bar. It's not the same. No.
And we're gonna have, and a caterer that we recommend is doing us a solid, and they're gonna have some really wonderful cheese platters and charcuterie platters that we could never afford if we didn't have a relationship with them. So it's really a deal. It's $40. There's gonna be a series of tastings of international wines and some wonderful cheese and charcuteries, and that's.
Cornucopia catering?
No, it's cornucopia catering.
Oh,
Yeah, yes, it's Elliot, yes, I know, I was like, got a brain fart for a minute, yeah. Yes, it's cornucopia, and they're doing us a favor because they're also catering our gala. And we are going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary of the TCCC on November 5th, and it's going to be a wonderful event catered by Cornucopia, and there's going to be some wonderful live music and surprises, and it's going to be a beautiful event. We hope you'll all come to that and support us. And on September 18th, we have Jason Love back for a comedy night, and everybody loves those shows. He brings in some wonderful comedians. It's only $25. You get free wine. Antonio, there's wine at that event too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why is anybody here? Where's the wine and the comedy? What are we doing here?
This is the best of the best, though, okay? So forget about all of that. Everybody give a warm welcome to Antonio Sanchez.
And probably more importantly, Rico Ramirez too, my good friend. Yeah. So thank you all for joining tonight. We're live on the
Yes, the YouTube stream.
The web, what's it called? Internet?
Internet.
Internet, there we go. Some new thing. It'll be gone in a few years, just like everything else, except for the native plants. So a lot of what we do, Rico and I don't want to speak for Rico, but a lot of what we do. Oh,
We're
already
hearing
getting. Oh, it's all good. I'm on delay. Like physically, I'm on a spiritual delay. So in important events, it's always good to start off with either some poetry, some remarks, or even a song. So Rico and I got to meet each other about 2013 out at Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden, working with a bunch of native plants in Claremont. And I like to think we're the same age, but we're not. He's definitely way younger than me. But he's an amazing botanist with Caltrans, helping a little bit with the Liberty Canyon project, with the crossing that's going over. And I've been working with native plants for 15 years, and I got to show Rico just a little bit of what I know. He really didn't need much help. But more importantly than working together at Rancho, we got to start playing music together. And we both have strong spiritual ties to music, to native plant music. So we're in a band. It's a very horrible band called Sage Against the Machine. We play nothing but California native plant songs. Yeah, we're lucky to play music together because it's one way. You know, a lot of people write songs about love, about relationships and things like that. And those are all important. We like to think that in the past, and a lot of us still day to day, and in the future probably, if we're going to survive, one of our true loves is the plants and giving thanks. And so we wrote this song, and we're going to play it for y'all, whether you want to or not. You guys can say I mean, you can walk out. Yeah. You guys can. I don't even know how you're watching this. It's like the internet or what. So I wrote this song thinking about oak trees, how some of them are 200 years old, 300 years old, 400 years old, and my mom, you know, who used to give us, me and my brothers, advice about how to, you know, dichos, you know, consejos in Spanish, like how to live your life. Some of them are really good and some of them are really bad. And how just respecting a native plant, like how a plant can feed the world. It still does, but you know, just 100, 200 years ago, it fed all of California, the oak trees. And looking at the desert and how it can come alive after just one rain, right? A quarter inch of rain, how the whole desert will come alive. And then how bay laurel trees, if you aren't familiar with our California bay laurel trees, how they could burn to the ground. And 2 weeks later, in June, after no rain, after being burnt to the ground, there's new plants 7 feet tall ready to get back at it again. You know? So we drew some inspiration from that, and we thought we'd start this talk off with this song. So if you guys will let us play this little prayer.
Please enjoy.
Just look up at that old oak tree. Years ago was a little baby, then 1 foot tall, then 2, then 3. One day that's gonna be me, mama. Give me the whole world to feed, mama. Give me a little baby squirrel to feed. Either way, I'll be free. Either way, I'll be me. 'Cause I'm looking up at grandmother tree. One day that's gonna be me, 'cause I wanna be a native plant. I wanna grow where they say I can. Mama, make me a native plant so I can grow where they say I can. When they say I can. That's 2 inches, do you need any more? Smell the rain hit the desert floor. A little rain makes the desert roar. All the hippies, even Al Gore, they're taking pictures, they ask for more. But too much rain becomes a bore. Too much rain becomes a bore. So my desert God made my desert poor. Adobe wall and adobe floor, but roots are deep to the earth's core. We're so rich, close up stars, 'cause I wanna be a native plant. I wanna grow where they say I can. Mama make me a native plant so I can grow where they say I can. When they say she said, look ahead or you'll stay behind, mijo. Get the past out of your mind, mijo, like a baked tree that's burnt to the ground. She wakes up and looks all around. None of her sisters are to be found. The birds are quiet now. Live in the past and you can drown. All the past weighs a million pounds. Look ahead, look all around. A new forest rising from the ground. And next to you, a little campground. A little family, proud and brown. A little mija with eyes all round. She's looking up, she's spellbound. She's looking up, it's so profound. She looks at her mama, she makes the sound. She says, I wanna be a native plant. I wanna grow where they say I can. Mama, make me a native plant so I can grow where they say I can. When they say I can, always grow when they say you can't. Always grow when they say you can't. Always grow when they say you can't. Always grow when they, always grow when they, always grow when they say you can't. Thank you all. That means a lot.
We are vibrating.
Yeah.
That was
Thank you.
crazy. Wow.
I love it.
So we're here to talk about California native plants, not just sing about them. So I'm.
Can you come over here?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. That'll be the best.
I'm gonna turn this way so I can. You mind if I take your king's chair, Rico? Is this? Do I have to look that way or?
No.
Yeah. So I'm super lucky to be working with native plants. I've been working with them for over 15 years. I started off working in farms, actually with my grandma in Oxnard, growing chiles and stuff like that, from a Mexican background. And then I went to school for sustainable ag, and now I get to grow native plants. And so I'm super lucky to be doing what I do. I work at the Santa Monica Mountains, which is a national recreation area. I don't work for national parks like Yosemite or Sequoia. The place I work for is Friends of the National Parks, and so it's almost like Friends of Sequoia, Friends of Yosemite. I get to run the nursery, I get to run the seed collecting program, and the volunteer outreach program that we have too. We grow over 50,000 plants a year for restoration, and we grow over 15,000 plants a year to give out to the public. We've given out over 10,000 plants this year of milkweed, of narrow-leaf milkweed, and I would dare say that we're changing the world. And We're doing amazing work, and I just get to sit in the back seat and just watch all of my coworkers do the amazing work. It's really cool. So before we start talking about native plants and how to welcome them into your garden, because that's what this talk is called. Eventually we'll get set up. The talk is called Welcoming California Native Plants Back into Your Garden, right? Maybe not all the ones that were in your garden or even your apartment or your school garden or whatnot, but welcoming them back. So I'll be referring to the whatever this is. What is this, internet? But before I start, I have to give thanks to the farmers I learned from, amazing biodynamic, organic, conventional farmers I used to work with. I used to work at the Theodore Payne Foundation. Me and my primo, a very good cousin of mine and a very good friend of mine, apart from that, we used to have Nopalito Native Plant Nursery in Ventura County, which is a retail nursery that we ran for 4 years. I used to run the nurseries at Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden. I used to work at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. My friends at Chia Cafe, a lot of California native folks before and now that I have to give thanks to. Way too many, but I've learned so much from all those folks. So before we actually get into it, we always like to cover what is a California native plant. That's the question that a lot of people have, and the second question is why are they so ugly? That's normally the second question. And it's hard to compete. I will admit, when I first got into native plants, it took a lot. It's like wearing these glasses when you grow up, right? When you go to the DMV, when you go to the hospital here in California, when you go to Bonds, Vallarta, wherever you guys shop, almost every landscape is a non-native plant. And you have those glasses on. It's really hard to take those glasses off. And so what we're trying to do is to take those glasses off and realize that those plants are amazing. They're beautiful plants. And they're non-native. That's not the big deal. The big deal is that maybe they don't feed local wildlife like they should. Maybe they don't have a connection to local people like they should. There's no songs associated with those plants. Here in California, they don't feed local people like yourselves. Most of them take more water than a native plant. There's so many reasons why we want to do native plant. A lot of times we go to Lowe's or Home Depot, we'll just shop by our eyes. It's a lot of very sexual the way we look at plants. Like it's like we're looking at people, we're just looking at their appearance and we want to get to know the plants. So today I'm going to talk to you about 10 different plants that I think are beautiful for your garden. None of them are from the high deserts. None of them are from redwood forests. None of them from like 10,000 foot alpine meadows. Those are all California native plants if they occur here in California, but they're hard to grow here. And so we're going to talk about oak woodland plants. We're going to talk about chaparral, coastal sage-grouse. If you all don't know what these are, it's all good. We're just going to talk about plants used to the LA basin that have been here for thousands of years and usually love it here. And the one thing that I need you all to realize is that the plants that we're talking about for thousands of years, I don't know how many of you have a job that you drive to every day. You might have a gas station that you fill up in. You might have a coffee spot if you don't make your own coffee. If you guys drink coffee. I went for like a week without coffee the other week. And that first cup of coffee, I have a whole new album. It's called The Coffee Cuts. It's crazy. Anyways, imagine how fast humans get used to stuff, right? We have habits. Imagine a plant and how quickly a plant has habits over thousands of years, not quickly, how they develop habits. So the one habit that we need you all to understand, which is way different than farming, and it was hard for me to understand this, because farming, we get our soil ready in March, April, May, we till it, compost, all that stuff. The one habit that our native plants are used to, and they've been used to it for thousands of years, is they receive their water during the winter, which is November to March, and that's the wet season. Basically, California has 2 seasons for gardening. It's the wet season and then the dry season. And the dry season is April through October. So I'm gonna hold up my fingers and we're gonna count how many months our plants have gone without water for thousands of years, right? So April, May, June, July, August, September, October. That's 7 months on average, right? Every now and then, if you look at the historical records, there might be a monsoon in LA. Very rare, very rare. Usually we have way less than half an inch from April to October in the LA basin. So it's like waking someone up at 3 in the morning and going, here's your breakfast. Dude, I haven't eaten breakfast in 3 in the morning ever. My family has never. Why are you waking me up at 3 in the morning? What I'm used to is eating my breakfast from November to March. That's when our plants want to wake up. That's when we want to do most of our work. And that was very hard for me to learn because I came from the farming background, which is tomatoes in mid-March, corn in early May, feeding those plants in June. So it's a way different way of gardening. So if you look at San Francisco and the city of San Francisco, you take the footprint of how much of San Francisco is developed, over 80% of the physical space of what is San Francisco is paved over. And very few of those areas that aren't paved over are native plants. And that's one of our big issues, is that I don't think a lot of us mind other folks that aren't from California coming in, developing. You know, I think a lot of us would hope it would be more sustainable, blah, blah. But we'd like for the native plants to be there. What we're taking out, if we took 80% of the native plants out of San Francisco, how come we didn't put the last 20%? It seems like we would want to put those in. So I work with a lot of youngsters, I call them youngsters, a lot of college folks, college age folks, or traditional college age folks, like 24 years and younger. And I took one of my coworkers to Lowe's the other day, and we counted, and we were looking for native plants. Over 400 species of plants for sale. How many native plants were there?
Oh, three.
3, perfect, you got it. I'm not good at percentages, but I think that's less than 50%. I think.
You think.
And so how do we bring California back? And so one thing that we're doing at the park is we take herbarium samples, and I'm sorry you guys can't see this, but an herbarium sample is just a cut, dried, pressed flower, and it has DNA in it, and we can put a label on it as to where we found it. 100, 200 years ago, that herbarium sample might have said, you know, Exxon, Sanchez Exxon and Oxnard off of Rose Avenue. Well, Rose Avenue has changed. It's not, it's Obama Avenue now, and Sanchez gas station is now a liquor store. And so what we try to do is have GPS points now, right? So we actually have physical points that hopefully aren't going to change for thousands of years. And we can go back and look to see where these plant populations are, right? So we've done that with a bunch of plants. And I was going to show a video, but since we can't show it, it's a video that's online. You guys can find it online. All it was is a video of us looking from a 1990s herbarium sample. And for the PCH, the 1 freeway in Malibu, and one of my coworkers last year looking up online an herbarium sample, and it said there's about 500 milkweed on this property on the 1. And this property is going, so milkweed, I'll get into milkweed. So this property is slated for development, and this is in the 90s. And so she went physically and she took video, and it's all storage now, which is fine. I think some of us would be like, development is fine, but are we mitigating? Are we putting anything back? There's no milkweed there. And so those 500 milkweed plants that monarch caterpillars could eat from are now gone. And so we want to use that as proof to inform what we do, right? When we plant in our gardens or we plant in restoration, we want to have proof that this is what used to grow here, this is what can grow here, this is what should grow here. And not to be all negative, things can change. So California is a big state. I think there's like 40, 50, 60 counties in California. I have no idea how many counties. I just made that number up. It feels like, so Ventura County, where I'm from, is the only county in California that currently bans the sale of tropical milkweed in all retail and wholesale nurseries, which is amazing. And that's only happened since June 8th. So it's only happened for about 2 months. And the reason it's only happened is the state of California recently named it on June 1st, excuse me. So about 2 months ago, they said it was a very noxious weed, and our county, our agriculture commissioner, took it upon himself and said, we're gonna stop selling tropical milkweed. And the reason we're gonna stop selling it is because we know that it stays awake all year. It never goes to sleep. It's like a Jack-in-the-Box. Have you guys ever seen Jack-in-the-Box? 24-hour Jack-in-the-Box? You shouldn't be eating that French fries at 4 in the morning, but they're open. And if you got the munchies, that's a bad idea.
Bad.
It's a reason that liquor stores close at 2 a.m. so you can stop partying. So the tropical milkweed doesn't stop partying. It's a 24-hour casino. It's from the Midwest. It's not native to California, and it doesn't get cold here, so it doesn't die back. And we're finding when plants die back, a lot of times what they're doing is they're taking a bath, right? They're washing themselves of anything dirty. And our milkweed can get an OE pest. I don't know what OE stands for. It's a very, very long word. But it's a pest that our monarchs can carry deposit on the leaves, and then the next monarch can come, and it kills thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of monarchs a year. But our native milkweed goes to sleep. It takes a shower every winter. The tropical milkweed doesn't, and that's why we think it's so dangerous. So they've stopped selling them in Ventura County. They actually had to go to Lowe's and Home Depot and tell them to throw them out, which is really cool. And we partnered with the ag department, and we said we want to give out, let's give out thousands of plants. We had them, and so we gave out 2,000 plants in Santa Paula, 2,000 plants in Camarillo, 2,000 plants in Moore Park, and we're hoping to give out 2,000 more before the end of September.
Of the native milkweed?
Of the native milkweed, yeah. And so there's another video just to show you. I won't show this again, but we counted 14 different insects just on these little stands of milkweed that we planted last year. So last March, they're less than 18 months old. Tarantula hawks, 3 or 4 different types of native flies, a bunch of native bees, including bumblebees, just hummingbirds, butterflies, moths. There's so much life in just a tiny amount of property. So we know that the plants have been here, right? We know that in Malibu they were there. There's the herbarium sample, and we know. Look how bad I am at technology. Look at that. That's trash. So what's killing the monarchs? And this is not a talk about monarchs, but the reason we're losing monarchs is the same reason we're losing native plants. Is our monarchs don't have anywhere to sleep during the winter. They don't have any food, right? The Malibu stuff got pulled out and never got put back in. Just think of all the Walmarts, all the houses out here that used to be, there used to be milkweed habitat. Pesticide use is a huge one. The wrong milkweed being planted, our habitats being fragmented, right? There's a reason that malls have 50 stores all next to each other. They don't have one store here and then 2 blocks and they have another store, right? Habitat needs to be together. When we break up habitats, it's really hard for insects to find populations of milkweed. Climate change we know is happening, and that's making it rough on insects, especially soft-bodied insects. And then there's smog, roadsides, all the pollution that happens. So Xerces Society led, they're a really good nonprofit organization. They led a study a few years back, and they took milkweed from wild populations, farms, homes, nurseries. They tested 227 samples of milkweed for pesticide use. All 227 had residue. Not use, but residue. Most of them weren't being treated. They all had residue. Overspray was left over in the soil. So imagine if you're a soft-bodied caterpillar this big that's eating the leaf, how dangerous that can be. So what's the solution? It's mostly native plants. So we know in Santa Monica they have a great display garden called Garden Garden. And right next to each other, there's a native garden and then a traditional lawn and non-native plants. And we know that the native garden can take 6,000 gallons of water compared to almost 60,000, so almost 10 times as much water. Green waste, almost 3 times as much green waste, which I might argue for because compost is amazing. But maintenance hours, 15 maintenance hours compared to 50 maintenance hours. And then all the smog that gets created from those small engines. And so some of the plants that I want to introduce you all to are 3 of my favorites I'll go over. Is narrow leaf milkweed, which is the local most common milkweed. And that is the milkweeds are the only plant that monarch caterpillars will eat. It's like me and carne asada tacos. I will not eat anything else. I'm just kidding, I almost don't even eat meat. But that's all they'll eat. You can put them on a buckwheat, on a sage, the caterpillars won't eat anything else, they'll die without this. And so I would argue this is one of the most important plants that we should plant. Really easy to grow. When we plant it, we recommend that you all plant 5, a minimum of 5. Why 5? If you all are gonna have a kid's birthday party, and there's 20 kids coming, how many pizzas do you order for the kids? 1 or about 10 or 20? You wanna order a lot because the kids are gonna eat, and if there's not enough pizzas, they're gonna be pissed off. So what happens when you have a milkweed is the monarch, she'll find it, she'll lay her eggs, she'll lay dozens of eggs, the caterpillars will wake up, and if there's only one plant, which is what happens a lot in nursery industry, people will buy 1s and 2s, the caterpillars will eat the heck out of that one and you'll kill. So I would argue that you're doing more damage to monarch populations by only planting 1 milkweed. We need you to plant 5. That's our sweet spot. So when we gave out these 2,000 milkweed, we forced people to take 5 plants. And so we only gave out 400 sets of milkweed. But imagine if all those survived. That's 400 new colonies of milkweed. And so this is actually not that hard. People like narrow leaf milkweed. Yeah. Oh, and this is my favorite. These are my favorite size. I really narrow. Yeah. Like my range of knowledge is very narrow. So narrow leaf milkweed.
I don't think so.
Really, it's pretty. My second one is hummingbird sage. And hummingbird sage I love because you can use it for food. It flowers over 6 months out of the year. And it's a great plant for full sun to part shade. And it's a really good plant to learn about California with, because in California, in August, September, October, hummingbird sage will go dormant. So without water for 3 or 4 months, she goes to sleep. And in native nature, it's almost hard to find the plant. It's so dry. But in our gardens, if we water it every 10 days during the dry season, so April, May, June, July, August, September, October, so 7 months times 3 times a month, right? Every 10 days. So all we need to water is about 20 times a year, and we can get it evergreen like a lawn. Wow. If you're watering your native plants more than 3 times a month, they're not native anymore. That's a lawn. We can keep a lawn alive with once a month or once a week. Who had a question? And that I've gardened almost everywhere in Southern California as far as heat and drought goes. Ojai, Riverside, Claremont, Pasadena, Oxnard, Santa Monica. The heat here in Topanga and Tarzana, who cares? If we're bringing Northern California upper elevation alpine plants, we do care. But these local plants, a lot of times have been used to these heat waves and these droughts. Our plants can make it, yes.
Can you please show what the milkweed looks like again?
Yeah. The milkweed. Oh, I guess I can't because there's no good pictures.
Do you have any with you to show?
Negative, no. I have caterpillars in the car, they ate it all. It's not a good picture. It's bad.
That's pretty. It's pretty.
No, that's hummingbird sage. That's hummingbird sage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We had it in our children's garden though. It looked really nice.
And so the third one that I really like is the only one that's not local. It's not native to Southern California. It's more central than Northern California. Is coyote mint. And the reason I put coyote mint on here is because it's a phenomenal food plant for monarchs. And so what we're trying to do is not just have beautiful plants, low water, but we're trying to feed local things too. And so coyote mint starts in Central California, goes up to Northern California. And what insect is traveling that way during June, July, and August? The monarchs. And so you can actually almost see the footprint of the monarchs go where the coyote mint is. Really easy to grow. It's almost like an oregano or a thyme. If you've ever grown that, kind of goes dormant during the winter. You cut it back to the ground. Comes back in March and April. Beautiful plant. Easy to grow.
How many times do you water that a year?
3 times a month during the dry season. Yeah, at the most, right? Because remember, these plants are alive with no water. And so all we're trying to do, so let's put it this way, I can live for a week without water or food. I don't want to, but I can make it. But if you were to give me water once a day, I'd be fine, right? As long as I'm not exerting myself. And that's what our plants do during the summer. They're not going crazy and flowering like crazy during the summer. They're kind of frozen, almost like a bear hibernating. So all we're trying to do is just give the bear who's hibernating just a little snack. We're not trying to make them grow crazy, because we know the crazy time to grow is November through about May. Through June to about October, we're just trying to let them kind of relax, maybe a few extra flowers. Cool. And so those 3 plants I just shown you are perfect for pollinators. The milkweed is great for tarantula hawks. Tarantula hawks love that plant. The hummingbird sage is perfect for hummingbirds, and then the coyote mint is perfect to feed your monarch, the adults, right? And so how do we attract pollinators to our garden? Besides planting native plants, we want to plant in big groups, right? Instead of 1 here and then 1 in your neighbor's garden, let's plant groups of 3, 5, and 7. A lot of times the insects can sense color, and so we want to plant in those groups of color. We like to have something flowering all year round. I'll show you all a few plants that flower in December, January, February, which is a hard time to find native plants flowering, and then late, which we call September, October. We're trying to have something all year round for, not necessarily for every pollinator, but something flowering all year round. We don't want to use any chemicals or pesticides. We want our gardens to be messy and uneven, because our insects like to hang out. It's like playing hide and seek. If you have hide and seek in this very modern Brad Pitt house with one table, one sofa, and nothing else, if you're a kid, you don't have anywhere to hide. That's a bump. That's a crappy place. It's like a lawn. That's what a lawn is. But if you have a slightly messy house with 5 kids and the dishes are here, it's great for kids to play hide and seek. And that's what our insects want to do. They're trying to hide from other insects, or they're trying to hide from birds or squirrels. So give your insects, give your pollinators, your hummingbirds, uneven areas, slightly messy areas to play hide and seek. That's what they're trying to do. It's a bad analogy, but I think you guys. No leaf blowers. Imagine if you're a tiny little monarch sleeping and you come. I'm pissed off enough when a leaf blower comes in at 7 in the morning. Imagine how a monarch caterpillar is. So no leaf blowers. Light pollution at night. If you all could reduce the amount of light pollution, especially for moths. A water source, if you don't have a problem with mosquitoes, for small birds to come and drink from is amazing during the summer. And then small or taller shrubs that are kind of uneven, like 5 foot, 10 foot, 15, for our birds to hang out and perch and not be on the ground, right? They can kind of see stuff, attack the insects, and then hide from cats and stuff. And so unfortunately, you can't see this, but this is a phenomenal native plant. But in this map of California, we can see these blue dots, and those blue dots correspond to where that plant is. It's up on the other side of Bakersfield, the other side of the Sierra Nevadas. It's a really hard plant to replicate here in California. So when we do local plants, we like to look up how local they are, and we like to see maps that can show us where their distribution is. If a plant occurs native to San Diego, Bakersfield, Oxnard, and San Francisco, that's a lot of different areas. That's like a human who lived for a while in San Diego, Fresno, San Francisco. When you get to live in all these spots, you're pretty well adapted and you're kind of not scared of anything. But you can tell when someone grew up in Beverly Hills and that's all they kind of did was gymnastics and like hot yoga, and they'd go out to like Compton, no me gusta, right? So that's what we're trying to do in our gardens. I don't know what your garden is, but if we know a plant occurs in all these different areas, there's a really good chance it's going to be successful. And I take this to the bank. If we have wide-ranging species in dozens of counties across California, almost always we can guarantee it's going to succeed in Southern California. They're very, very easy. It's when we have plants that occur in one county on granite rock in one town. That's a hard plant to replicate in Fresno or San Diego or San Francisco, right? Because it's thousands of years has only occurred in that one spot. And so yarrow is a great early flower. I've seen it flower in January, but it's more February, March. And this is where we like to encourage people to do maintenance on their gardens, because if you can maintain your garden, it flowers longer. So all plants are trying to do when they flower is basically, well, 2 things. They want to have sex, but they want to make kids for the next generation, right? And so they're setting seed, the seed will drop. But what happens if they flower and then you come and cut the flower before they set seed? Most small plants, not big oaks, but most small 2-3 foot plants will say, I have the energy, I have the water, because you're watering me every 10 days. I have the resources to flower again. I'm going to try to basically have sex again and then make seeds. And so what we see is repeat blooms with our small plants. We'll see it with hummingbird sage, we see it with coyote mint, we see it with yarrow, and we see it with solidago, which is California goldenrod. So yarrow is early January, February, March into April, May if you're deadheading. So if you're removing those spent flowers, the key is don't let them get pregnant. Just let them go have fun at night. Right?
It's a fine line.
Yes, it's a very fine line. And what we do is every 2 weeks. We're cutting off dead flowers every 2 weeks. If you just go and cut dead flowers every 3 months, it's too late. A lot of them have set their seed and they're not going to flower. You can cut the flowers off, but they won't respond because they know my seed has already dried, and I don't know that you cut it. I just think a bird dropped it, and the seed is in the ground, and I'm good until next year. So same thing with solidago. California goldenrod will flower again, will rebloom if you're deadheading it. This guy, and some places in our mountains haven't even started flowering yet. So July, August, September, October for this guy. I'll be happy to share this PowerPoint with you guys.
Great.
Getting into bigger plants, so most of those plants were 2 feet tall, 3 feet tall. The California buckwheats are probably our best plants for summer flowers. And you can close your eyes and just listen to the plant. in June, July, August, this plant attracts so many things. It's just such a loud plant. The buckwheats are great, and I don't know if y'all can see this, if your eyes can sense this, but see all this blue right here? All those blue dots are where it occurs naturally. This guy just occurs everywhere, in our deserts, out in Vegas, down in the Baja, up in San Francisco, out to Fresno. It's a very adaptable plant. Excellent, excellent plant. Here's a few more slides that aren't really good unless we can see them up close, so I'm gonna skip over these, unfortunately.
Antonia,
Mhm.
so you can send this to us?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and then what I can do is I can email it to everyone when they get the video of
Yeah.
the talk.
Yeah,
So
no
you'll
problem.
be, so everybody will be able to see this.
Should we we should charge extra for that.
Yes, absolutely. An extra $25,
Don't give
please.
me
So-
And you get the PowerPoint.
So I want to make sure if we have any questions, I want to be able to answer them. So our black sage is our easiest to grow native sage, apart from the hummingbird sage. The hummingbird sage is kind of a different plant though. Of our shrubby sages, which are like rosemary and lavenders, our black sage is easiest. And if you could see this, down in the Baja, San Luis Obispo, San Francisco, it occurs in a lot of different areas. It works in full sun and riverside. It works under oak trees. It's the most shade tolerant of the shrubby sages. Excellent. I love white sage, and it's one of the most sacred plants we have, but look at this distribution. It stops in San Luis Obispo, and San Luis Obispo is a very unique spot for plants. It's a cutoff. It's like a pool. You guys ever been to a pool and it's like 3 feet and then drops into 8 feet? That's what San Luis Obispo is. It's 3 feet, and then north of that becomes Santa Cruz and that coastal Watsonville area. It becomes really wet, and there's a whole different almost group of plants up there. And south of San Luis Obispo is a lot of straight up almost desert plants. And so Salvia apiana white sage, people usually have a hard time growing because they water too much, and it doesn't remember. For thousands of years, it doesn't understand what you're trying to do. But black sage can tolerate it because look at where black sage is native to. It's native to San Francisco, and San Francisco has a historical rainfall of over 20 inches of rain a year compared to the LA basin, which is about 12 to 14. So when we're deciding what plants to use, we're trying to pick locally what we think will grow. If you have a irrigation system that will go off once a month, white sage is a plant. If you have an irrigation system that goes off twice a week, black sage. White sage will only live for about 2 or 3 years and then it will die. The gooseberries, the currants, these are all edible. Some of them are really good, some of them are horrible. Golden currant is my favorite. It's very easy to harvest, very easy to eat. But these flowers show up around Christmas. They're going strong in January, and you'll still find them flowering on Valentine's Day. And then the fruit comes around April and May. So an excellent hummingbird and monarch plant, nectar plant, early, or if we want to call it late.
What are the dates again?
So Christmas to about Valentine's Day. It's really rough dates, but it's December basically to February. And you can see, look at this distribution, up towards Oregon, out towards Reno, San Francisco, here in Southern California. It's a nice wide distribution. And bladder pod, one of my favorites. This is a weird distribution. Most distributions go up the coast. This bladder pod goes across California. So it goes into Arizona and Nevada, which is really weird. It's kind of following the heat. So we can make the case that if global warming and climate change happen, that bladder pod won't care because it's already living in Phoenix and Nevada. And so it's already getting 14 inches in LA and then about 4 inches out here in Death Valley, right? It has that locked into its memory. You can take that. This plant without water can flower for over 6 months. With water can flower all year, which is amazing.
How many times do you water?
2 to 3 times a month to
So
keep it
all
flowering.
these are just 2 to 3 times a month of
During
water.
the
I'm giving you guys, I'm assuming that you guys don't know what you're doing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm giving you the stuff that's easy. The only one that's dangerous is the white sage. But it's because it's such a special plant to me. Everything else, 2 or 3 times a month, fine. 2 or 3 times a month on white sage could kill it eventually.
in the summertime.
Yes, yes. And bladder pod's related to capers, so you could pickle the seeds just like capers and enjoy them with your family. It's a big hummingbird plant. It's a phenomenal plant. One of my favorite plants, because I think part of what's missing with California is that we just look at plants as just things. We don't have any stories tied to them.
those.
And Our Lord's Candle is one of my favorite plants. This is a native yucca, and this plant only flowers once in its whole life, and it flowers about 5 to 15 years to flower. There's only one insect, the chaparral yucca moth, that will pollinate the fruit. I'm sorry, the flower, and then produce seed. She'll lay her eggs inside the flower. The fruit will produce inside the little egg, the fruit, and then the little caterpillars will wake up and eat all the seed. It's really cool.
Wait, ¿es la flor de isote?
No, no es una flor, no, yucca, es otra planta. But I love this plant because she's almost offering herself. She only will flower once, right? And that's it. And so the fact that there's this relationship between the yucca, and it wakes up around April and May, which is probably one of the prettiest times in California to wake up and just look at all the hillsides. It's really, really pretty. Deer grass is another great plant. You can find it all around the freeway. Caltrans uses it. No offense, Rico there. They use it way too much. But it's a big basketry plant in local, in California traditions. But it's a really good placeholder. It's a really good kind of structural architectural plant. And it can grow under oak trees in full sun. At Phoenix, they're using it.
Can you repeat the name?
It's deer grass.
Okay.
And this was the slide, I'm not going to click on this, but this was to take you to our purple needle grass, which is our state grass, to show you where it occurs in the map, and it occurs nowhere in the Central Valley because the Central Valley is just full of farms. But we know the Central Valley used to be wetland areas where all the birds used to pass through on their migratory way. A lot of flat areas where there's probably a bunch of milkweed and a bunch of grasses. Over 90% of the grasses in California are gone. And so we like to encourage folks to plant native grasses because we know that they're low water, 10, 15, 20 feet worth of roots sometimes. So they're aerating the soil, they're sending the water down into the water table sometimes, and they attract local wildlife. And so what we do at the park is we'll plant 5,000 oak trees, but we can also restore our gardens. There's a 10 by 20 foot garden without a lawn can attract hundreds of tarantula hawks and monarchs and feed them. And it's almost easier to do in your garden than what we do out in the miserable native nature where there's no water and it's pretty rough out there. And so we like to promote urban restoration, which is in your apartment, in pots, in your front yard. 2 more plants. If I could force all of LA to plant a tree in their garden, it would be Mexican elderberry because the fruits are healthy. They're edible. You can make wine out of them. You can freeze them and eat them. People use them for medicine. It's an amazing pollinator plant. All these little berries were one-time flowers. So bees, moths, butterflies. It's a musical plant. You can make clapper sticks out of the elderberries. It's a low water plant. There's a gentleman at the Santa Monica Farmers Market who sells fresh elderberries. It's just a great plant that we used to have a lot more of. You can see all those, it's hard to see that, I'm sorry.
How tall does it grow?
That's a great question. So elderberry, I think minimal should be 8 feet. And up, when it's happy, when it has a water source, it could be 30 to 40 feet.
Ooh.
So here's the thing.
Oh, wow.
Here's the thing. It goes, without water, it goes pretty dormant. In a water source or in a lawn, it's evergreen, right? And if you see elderberry, so this is the ground, there's new water shoots coming up. When you see a plant like that, like willow or that bay, you can cut that to the ground, replicate in a fire. It's called coppicing. You can't coppice an oak tree, right? There's no water shoots on an oak tree, but on a sycamore there are. And so you can cut an elderberry to the ground and it'll come right back. Usually you don't have to do that, but when a plant shows you that, it's very flexible. And so you can almost do whatever you want to it maintenance-wise, right? So you don't have to let it get 30 feet tall. You can keep it about 8 to about 15 feet tall. And then the last one that I would, after everyone plants elderberries, the next one I would do is toyon, because they almost flower at opposite times. Elderberry flowers about March, April, May, and then the toyon's about June, July, August. And the toyon, has these red fruits November to about January. They're edible. They're not very good. It's one of the few native plants that I eat regularly that I have to add sugar to. It's very bland.
No.
But I use them in yogurt with a little bit of honey, and they're awesome. But traditionally can be dried and used like in a trail mix. But they're great for birds. It's a great pollinator plant. It's one of the few bushes that is in full flower in July. So for pollinators, it's amazing. And all these plants, this is a great, Toyon can be 20 to about 35 feet. But I've seen them a riverside get about 8 feet tall, like a column, if you want to do that. This is about a 6 foot tall topiary. A lot of our plants are super flexible, especially if you're watering 2 to 3 times a month. We're just giving them a little bit of hydration just to keep them a little bit flexible.
Would it be a hedge plant?
You can, it's a great hedge plant. Very few
What is
native
the,
plants.
Yeah, what is the growth process on it? I mean.
Like how fast?
Yeah, how fast?
I would always start with small plants instead of big. Don't plant a big one because the big ones are usually they've been in pots for a long time and they take a long time to break out of the pots. The smaller a plant, it's like learning a new language. If you could teach a new language to a 3-year-old, like that. If you teach to a 50-year-old, hard because the roots, remember, it's true. Plants are just like people a lot of times. The younger we can get a plant in the ground, she'll take off. So plant like a 6-inch tall toyon if you
And
can.
they should be planted when?
We always plant our native plants November to March.
Okay, so
Yeah.
November.
Yeah. There's one exception. I don't even know if I want to get into it, but November to March is when we do almost all of our
So
work.
how far apart would they be?
Well, it depends on how close you want and how fast you want them.
Fast.
But about 8 feet. There's some videos online. I work for Samo Fund. We made videos on how to maintain your native sages, how to prune some of your plants, like how to coppice them to the ground. Those are all online. If you all are doing container gardening, it's way different than gardening in a garden, right? Or in a landscape. It's almost like a horse. A wild, if we want to call that a Mustang, a horse out in nature will survive on their own. You take that horse into a pen, you have to feed them, you have to give them water. But if you let that horse out early enough, they'll go out and survive on their own. But as long as you have that horse in a pen, which is what a plant is in a pot, you always have to feed with fertilizer and then you have to water. We don't ever do that in native landscapes, almost ever. We don't almost ever water or fertilize, but in a pot we fertilize 4 times a year. We give a lot of food because it's a captured horse, right? I think there's a slide of a horse right here. Yeah, there's a horse. So that's the best way I can describe it. If you have a native plant in a pot and it doesn't look good, it's because you have not given your horse any food or water. You have to give them. The second you put that in the ground, she'll find her way. It might take a year, but she'll get established. And then you don't go out and find Mustangs and give them food and water. They figure out how to do it. There's a few other tips, but I have no idea how long this talk is even. How long? What time are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have, because
So
we're
I-
gonna do the
yeah.
Q&A, like 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and me and Rico, if you guys are into it, we had one more song that we wanted to throw down.
Question, please.
Let me see if I have anything else, and you'll be the first. This is on fertilizers, but we don't use fertilizer in the ground except for compost, and then we use that in February and March. Compost isn't even a fertilizer; it's basically like a multivitamin.
Mulch.
Mulch is not a fertilizer. Mulch covers the ground, it keeps the weeds out, keeps the water in.
Is it good?
Mulch is phenomenal. Yeah,
Okay.
except when it's around the neck of a plant, right? If you keep it too up close to the plant, especially a chaparral plant or a desert plant. But mulch is awesome. Yes. I think that was it. So here's my email. My email is sanchezhorticulture@gmail.com. I could share this. Yeah, we like to do all of our plantings November to March because, and let me say this, and I'll get to your question. If we can plant November to March, I would do November 1st. If you guys could put an alarm on your clock and say November 1st, and the morning of November 1st, all you should do is get a 12-pack of Bud Light, and all of your plants, and then plant. I would do Budweiser, but it's too heavy. If you're gonna plant,
All day.
put everything in November,
Yes.
because the days are short. It may rain once or twice, and what happens? Usually around January, we'll get phone calls. Hey, I planted in November. It's been 2 or 3 months. My plants haven't moved. And I'll go, that's great, and I'll hang up. But what's happening? The plants are getting rooted in, and she's busy developing a base. What happens in March? The days get longer, and she gets pulled up and she has roots to support herself. What happens when we plant in March? The days are longer, there's no water in the ground, she can't set roots. The days in the heat's pulling the plant up, and I have to water a lot more, my plant's drying up. It takes you a whole year to establish your plant. So plant during the cold season, the wet season, and let the plants not do anything. They shouldn't do anything for 3 or 4 months. And then once March and April hit, they take off.
And I was gonna say, what's the best native plant nursery to go to?
It used to be Nopalito in Ventura, and now it's Artemisia Nursery in El Sereno in downtown, close to Northeast LA. Artemisia Nursery is phenomenal. They're really.
The Valley one.
But there's a few other ones too that haven't paid us for support. Artemisia has paid us for. The bass player, she's in the band, the owner of the shit. So she would kill us if we
That's the only one, like in El
No, there's a bunch. Matilla Nursery is really good. In Moore Park, Theodore Payne is. Oh, is this being recorded? Theodore Payne is great.
Yes.
In Sun Valley and Burbank, I used to work there. There's a few others that are Tree of Life and San Juan Capistrano is great.
What about consultants or someone that you would recommend, or do you provide that kind of service?
I don't.
Do you have anybody
Negative.
who comes out?
You know, so Theodore Payne.
Looks?
So Theodore Payne is a nonprofit. Let me get to her question first.
Oh.
Yeah, but let me answer that, and then. So Theodore Payne just came out with a list of landscape professionals that they recommend that have been through a training of theirs, and I think that's as good as you're gonna get just to answer your question quickly. Yeah. What was your question?
Thank you. I have some areas, 3 planting areas in the front of the house that.
So the first
next to
question,
the house.
well, the first question we should always find out is where do you live?
Van Nuys.
Okay.
Okay. It's the house and then the garden and then the walkway and then the grass, what is left of the grass. I have roses along there, and one plant's about 18 years old. It's tried really hard, but I think it's time to go. When I have to replace soil, I go to Home Depot and I get a mend or something like that.
Yeah.
If I were to take those roses out and wanted to plant one of these plants, do I need to put any special soil in? What soil do you suggest?
So usually when you take out a plant, you shouldn't have a big hole there.
Well, no.
So there's 2 questions here. If you took out a lawn and your soil's flat, if you're asking me, do I need to put something in that soil to make it good for plants? Our native plants love it out here.
Just a regular soil.
You should see what they're growing in right now.
Adobe.
I mean, most of them don't grow adobe. They grow on gravel where the water runs right off. And so we're putting them in flat areas where it's clay, which is good soil. So our plants sometimes get 2 times as big in our lawns compared to what they are. So if that's your question, don't ever amend your soil.
Okay.
Right? Maybe 1 out of like 50 or 60 gardens have to amend. It's very, very rare.
Okay.
Very rare. But if your question is if I have a hole, right, like a 2-foot hole that I need to fill in because I took something out, I would grab just the most general, cheapest, crappiest garden fill you could get.
Okay, so for
Yeah.
the native plants, they love the earth that we have here. Succulents and stuff, I love the succulents, and when I pot them, I wish maybe I shouldn't
Yep.
be doing.
So you go
The
to-
small ones, I get cactus, I get succulent, what it says succulent.
Succulent, yeah, cactus soil.
Cactus soil.
Yeah, not in the ground, but just the
Okay.
cheapest, poopiest soil.
Okay.
It's way better than what they're, and our soil is amazing. I really hate when people say, oh, our soil in California is crap. Oh, that hurts me. No, you didn't know, I know. The Oxnard Plain, I think, has the 6th best soil in the world.
Wonderful.
Good.
And what we're looking at is not what Father John, Boyle? No, Gregory Boyle from Homeboy Industries. He says, like we don't want to judge people. We don't want to sit in judgment of people. We want to sit in awe of what people have to go through. And that's how I look at our native plants. I don't look at our native plants how ugly you are, how dry you are. I sit in awe of how amazing they are with 12 inches of rain. Look at you guys, what you can do with so little. On the hillside, when I put you in a flat area, of course you're going to be super, super happy. So most of our gardens are way better than better, if you want to put it that way, than what the native plants have been used to for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Did somebody? Okay.
I have a question. So we're out in Agoura Hills, and there is a mist in the morning.
Yeah.
I can't remember what months, but in the
June, that June balloon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that affect native plants or is that okay?
So they've been with it for thousands of years.
Okay,
Right?
so they'll be fine.
Almost all of them are gonna be fine.
Okay.
Where it gets in trouble is if there's, we have 4 sides of the house, most of our houses. And if you have a shady area of the house, and then you get that fog every day,
Mhm.
and then you're overhead watering a lot, and so you have fog, you have overhead water, and then it's kind of a low, like there's not a lot of air coming through, right? One of those tight, like 3-foot wide areas where,
Yeah.
like, that's where it can be a problem. That's where you get like powdery mildew on roses, like where there's not enough airflow and there's too much
Okay,
water.
no, I don't have
But
that.
apart
Yeah.
from that,
It's fine. Okay.
yeah.
This is just a really straightforward question. I fell in love with that Mexican elderberry tree.
Mhm.
Is there a particular like nursery that I would have to go to get one of those, or is it probably at any of those?
Artemisia,
Or
and you mentioned me and Rico's name, 10% off.
Ah.
Any purchase over $12,000.
Oh,
Jesus. Wait a minute.
That's all I can guarantee.
Wait a
I'm sure
minute.
Nicole would give you a 10% if you bought $12,000. So where I work, we have a program on Fridays and Saturdays where we welcome folks to volunteer with us for 2 hours. We give you 3 free plants, and then we give you actually 5 milkweeds too if you want to take home. So 5 milkweeds and 3 free plants, and elderberry can be one of them. And then we offer free classes. We have a maintenance class September 9th right here in Calabasas at Kingslet Ranch. And so that's a 2-hour maintenance class. We show you how to plant, how to deadhead and all that. So everything's online on Eventbrite, Samo Fund. That's why I work for Samo Fund.
Okay.
Eventbrite, you can find all those. And we used to have a lot of classes online, but we might start having a few more, but I would just check online.
King Ranch, right?
King Gillette Ranch, yeah. And we have questions about maintenance, irrigation, plant selection, poison oak.
There are a lot of people in my neighborhood that are trying to go to that, but some of them put rocks down and then they leave it alone and all the weeds are growing up to the rocks. It looks like crap.
Yeah.
One house down the street really has a beautiful, I don't know who they had do it, but they have different types of plants sort of positioned around their front of the house with mulch in there. This isn't really a question, it's just, it looks beautiful. It sounds like they talk to you or somebody almost as hard.
So the one great reference is Greg Rubin. He's a landscaper down in San Diego. He's written 2 books. He's done, according to Greg, I believe him, over 700 gardens. He's designed and installed over 700 gardens down in San Diego County.
Greg
Rubin, R-U-B-I-N. But his website is great. In 18 months, you can see how fast a native plant garden can get filled in. Most of Greg's, his plantings start off, they look sparse. There's a plant here, and then 8 feet away is another plant. And then he has pictures on his website. 18 months later, they're almost all touching. They're all pretty full. And that's because he plants during the winter when he can. He uses mostly young plants. And then his secret, which took me a long time to figure out because I came from farms, is his secret is he waters 2 gallons the first time that he plants. And then the second time that he waters is 2 more gallons. And which is different from a farm where we used to lay out like plugs and then drip tape, and the drip goes on for 30 minutes and then we turn it on 2 days later, and it's just water in here. 2 gallons is a ton of water. And I remember when I was starting, I'm all, Greg, that takes forever. Like 20 plants takes me like an hour to water because you can't give 2 gallons. But especially clay soil it won't drink it, right? It takes a long time for it to absorb. And it's all, we either get the youngest guy or the newest guy on the crew, we just give them a hose and they're there almost all day watering our 200 plants that we just installed. But what does that do? It takes a plant and it sits water under it, and it makes that plant chase the water. And it almost replicates what happens with our seedlings. In November and December, our seeds wake up with the rains and they drill and they follow the water. And once the water leaves, they stop. And so what too many people do is they just water here and the pot that they just planted dries out, right? There's not enough water, there's no water for the plant to chase. Guarantee you guys, if you could take the time, it takes forever. But that's what we do at the park. We do 2 gallons each plant because that gets the water under and we don't have to come for 2 to 4 weeks. because there's so much clay. There's the water, the soil just holds on to the water, and the whole time the plant's chasing. We come back 2 to 4 weeks later, we give it 2 more gallons, and the plant keeps chasing, and then we're pretty good.
This is just a sad comment. Both of our neighbors on both sides have all artificial turf and concrete. And these are big properties. Just breaks my heart.
Sounds like a midnight project for me and Rico. Where is this being recorded? That sounds amazing.
Can you tell us why we shouldn't use artificial turf?
I'm not really an expert on too much of that, but if we use common sense, right? I'm not saying that you're not using common sense, but so when it rains, the water's not soaking in. So it's probably runoff. There's no habitat we just showed that San Francisco's gone, and I mean, even a non-native plant will at least feed maybe like a bumblebee or something. Probably climate, like the heat. Can you imagine the heat that's being just bounced back instead of being absorbed with like a nice native shrub and some mulch?
Also,
I'm honestly, I don't know too much. I'm just kind of
toxic
remembering
emissions because it's plastic.
for what it was produced from. Yeah. That was a bad way of answering.
Doing nothing. But you knew that. You set him up to answer.
There you go.
Yes.
Love it. Make me look like an idiot. I got it. Thank you.
Would you suggest drip irrigation? You know, that they put.
Oh, that's too much of a question for right now. So here's the short answer. Most people can make native plants survive with drip, but most landscapers are most really good native plant landscapers are going to pop up low water use sprinklers that can give out like 20-25 gallons an hour. Sounds like a lot, but because that replicates more of a rain as opposed to like a muddy situation that drip can create really fast.
Okay, so when you're watering every 10 days during November to March, you're not killing all the little bugs and critters and stuff on there?
Well, you shouldn't be watering November to March, right? The rain should be watering on its own.
Oh, I'm sorry, during the hot season.
During the dry season, yeah, it's even more dangerous.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The dry
So
season,
during the
because you can
summertime.
keep a spot wet,
Okay.
right? It's like taking a spray bottle and just spraying someone on their shirt,
Yeah.
just that one shirt, just that keeping that spot wet. It's really dangerous for some like white sage, just a wet spot.
Just during the summer.
So the formula we have is 10 minutes for drip every 10 days.
Okay.
If you can do that,
Okay.
it's very hard to keep a wet, like deep wet area with 10 minutes. And that goes for half a gallon, 1 gallon, 2 gallon, an hour. It almost doesn't matter.
If there's no more questions, we would love to hear another song.
Yes.
You want to hear the song?
Yep, we'd love to, yes. And, and I just want to mention to everybody that, we will be sending out the link that's the recording of this. I will send it out with the PowerPoint that I know you didn't all get to see, which is gonna be super informative, and also the link to, the website if people wanna take classes through the SAMO Fund that you mentioned, and volunteer.
We have a grant to give out to school gardens, low income churches, not low income churches, but we do low income churches, low income houses, food gardens, community gardens, anybody. If you feel like you can justify that we very rarely say no to you, and we have a limit of plants, but we have a program to give out those plants to the public. That's our goal, is to get out as many local native plants as we can.
He did give us the milkweed seeds for the children's garden so that we could, and we taught all the kids about how those were the good milkweeds and not the bad ones.
I was, but this is a lot better. This is a lot better.
No, this is all.
I was freestyling right here. It's when I didn't have this, I'm like, oh, how am I gonna do this? It worked out. But when things are better, I do have a native food cooking class, which is, and this sage is one that I use for pesto, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pesto.
And then we use native onion if it's available. If not, we use garlic. It's amazing. Super. And then hummingbird sage, like honey. So this song, yeah.
And it's super.
This song's called Super Bloom.
Give me a minute.
Yeah, super.
Because the Super Bloom is so. You guys do like social media, like Instagram?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Why? Well, you want me to look
so
at
no,
it?
I don't want you to look at it, please. So when Super Blooms happen, Facebook, LA Times, Instagram, everyone has these pictures. Usually people like in these yoga pants or like way too tight everything, like in the middle of these fields with these super blooms. And that's great. People are enjoying California. But we don't ever see people in the same fields in August, right? And why wouldn't you go back in August to the same spot? Like, why do we only love California for her blooms? There's so much more to the plant. We can eat the plant, we can pray the plant, we can sing. And so we kind of wrote the song about the hypocrisy of the social media influencers and super blooms, because they just,
Which stage is this one?
that's a hybrid. So believe it or not, that's two sages combined in a garden. Someone had purple sage and then Cleveland sage. Purple sage grows up and down the coast, pretty wide.
That's the one that has the little purple like.
They both. Cleveland sage occurs in Baja and Cleveland National Forest. It's really hard to grow for most people because think of Baja and Cleveland National Forest. It's like 10 inches of rain a year. But they got together one night. I think they went to a bowling alley. And what happens a lot of time with hybrids is you get the hybrid vigor. You get the best of both worlds sometimes. And so you get the smell of Cleveland sage, but you get the adaptability, the really easy to grow purple sage. And it's such an easy to grow plant.
Is lavender considered?
Native? No. But it's, if you
Because
can
I
grow
know
lavender
lavender.
well, that's how we grow white sage.
Oh.
And people they overwater lavender and it gets woody and all that after 2 or 3 years. It's because most people don't know how to prune it or maintain it. That's how we maintain our sages, the same way as we do lavender.
Do you want to do like intro or?
Okay.
Is there an intro? You do whatever you do. I'll jump in whenever you're ready.
6-piece band.
Well,
Fine, we can call it 6 pieces. What?
We'll make an exception.
we have our.
Are you done?
Speaking of
Are you all done?
speaking of Instagram, we have the native Staging Against the Machine is our thing, and we'll play like 4 shows in the next 2 months, huh?
Yeah.
So they're all like house parties or like at nurseries and stuff. So
Amazing.
Jam at the nursery.
yeah,
Wow.
there's usually pretty.
That was great.
That was
I really
fantastic.
enjoyed that.
So subversive.
Thank you, guys.
Incredible.
They're
Thank you,
following
guys.
you. You guys
There
have
it
to
is.
come. You guys have to come.
Serious, I'm gonna bug you. I'm gonna
Yeah.
bug you.
Yeah, well, we're talking about showing
Yeah.
the film that Rico's part of, the Sage in the World
Yeah,
film
yeah.
about white sage.
Well, we should do that as a separate event.
Okay.
So you and I should talk about that more, because that sounds fantastic.
Is it on YouTube?
But,
I
The
think so.
the movie?
Yeah.
I don't think so, huh? They haven't released it on
No,
YouTube
I
yet.
don't think so.
They're trying
Oh.
to just have like fundraisers
Oh.
showing. Yeah.
But we could do a screening of it here, or you just
Well, we
wanna
could
do
arrange it
in-
with the folks who, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We got the.
We would love to do that. We would love you guys also to play at our music night, just because your songs are incredibly cool. And you sound great. You sound great.
You haven't heard "Baby I'm a Botanist"? That's.
Baby, I'm a botanist. Oh my
You want
God.
a taste?
I love it.
That's a troublemaker right there.
Oh, I love it so much.
Do you guys have any other questions?
No,
Well, then my email's right there if you all.
And then, with every ticket, you gotta give about $5, so,
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll send the link out soon with all the goodies. Thank you. Yeah.
Well done.
Really informative.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
great. It was entertaining too.
Yeah, you said, hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Wow.
Really
Yeah,
Oh my
thanks very much.
gosh. The
Thank
you,
songs are
thank you.
incredible. I mean, you are like, you're with the collective unconscious somewhere. It's really
It's fun.
amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
God, fantastic. Rico,
Oh.
the man.
Oh, thank you.
So great.
Thank you.
So great.
You gotta
Thank
hear
you
our
so
band
much.
all together.
Oh, I just
Oh.
cannot wait. I cannot wait.
6-piece
And the
band,
people that
drums,
live there,
Oh,
piano,
God.
Mexico,
Wow.
guitar.
Wow.
we have
That's
about
amazing.
6
You guys did a great job, just the two of you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for having us.
Oh, my pleasure.
I don't know how old it is, but I need somebody that knows.
Right.
It's all underground.
But now with this route, the grass is dead, I really want to turn the whole landscape into this.
Yeah.
But I need to find somebody, so I was gonna find somebody like.
Yeah, if you email me, I can give you a few recommendations.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a lot of the, we planted a lot of this, I don't know what they're called, but they're like orangey and they're for the hummingbirds. Their flowers like orange, reddish.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to end the stream now. I see we still have 5 people.
No, it's a tree, they're like
And
trees.
Antonio.
And it's a thin tree.
Antonio. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know, you can
Talk
see
to
it,
you
but
later.
anyway,